I remember dimly pretending to be a teacher when I was a kid, but I also pretended to be one of Charlie's Angels, and that didn't make me think I would end up fighting crime in high heels. I had a great deal of respect for teachers, but I would get so frustrated when people would say, because I was studying English, that my only career option was teaching. Actually, there weren't very many career options that were at all appealing to me at that point. My 12th grade mantra was, not that, that was it. All I want is to see the planet and be happy. That was 31 years ago. Blackslide. What happened? How did this get to be my life? Why am I a teacher? We know what we are, but know not what we may be. Ophelia says these words in Act 4 of Hamlet. Her boyfriend has accidentally murdered her father, and she's gone mad. But her words resonate beyond that context, as do many lines from Shakespeare. We know what we are, but know not what we may be. I'm having a little Ejé Polat moment here. Can I see that? Sorry. Even the drama teacher. Look at that. Pardon me. Huh. Who does know what we may be? Teachers. Teachers believe people can change. Why would you go to school otherwise? Teachers design environments that are safe for exploration and experimentation. In school, as in life, when we explore and experiment, we make discoveries about the world and ourselves. Teachers see our potential, and they give us the opportunity to change. I took a critical writing class with Dr. Jensen. She was intimidating to most students because she was extremely smart and she was a tough grader. I appreciated her straightforward, constructive criticism because I knew when I got an A in her class, it meant my writing had merit. In 1990, 2 years after I graduated, I went back to my alma mater to take classes to prepare for grad school. And Dr. Jensen said, why don't you sign up for the teacher education, the teacher training program? I took her advice. Why? I did not want to be a teacher. Why would I study to be a teacher? Well, Dr. Jensen had given me plenty of chances to look at my writing in new ways, and I thought maybe she can help me look at my life in new ways. She offered me a choice that I would never have considered on my own. In 1995, I was teaching and substituting at a small high school in Shakespeare, Pennsylvania. Shakespeare is a small farming community that's nestled in the mountains along the Susquehanna River. And the high school principal came to me and said, would you be our drama club advisor? I had no directing experience. So I remembered what Dr. Jensen had said about writing. Go with what you know. And I loved Shakespeare. So I chose Much Ado About Nothing for my directorial debut. A lot of people thought that was a ridiculous idea. Few people believed that a group of kids who grew up on farms would be able to understand, let alone perform, a play by Shakespeare. One exception was my colleague, Dr. Jensen, Dr. Gardner. She assigned the play to the 12th grade English classes. And the school custodian, LaRue Sutliff, he said, Stillman. Only thing Shakespeare and Shakespeare have in common is they begin with SH. He was a skeptic, but he designed and rigged a fountain in the center of the stage with running water for our set. What was I thinking? Well, I was thinking Shakespeare was far more experienced with directing than I was. And I was completely right. My students and I studied that script, and we got a crash course in the art of staging a play. I also believed that if my students could face this challenge, they would see their potential. They would start to believe that they were as brave and talented as I saw them. See, my students were used to being called Hicks. Shakespeare is located almost exactly in the middle of two college towns, Scranton and Bloomsburg. And my students were used to being treated as though they were stupid. I've never really understood where that stereotype of farmers comes from because I have rarely met a stupid farmer. In fact, most of them are full of way more common sense than other people, but I digress. As I said, it was a small town. And as with most schools on planet Earth, except for this one, the art, music, and drama programs were a bit underfunded and always at risk when there was a budget crisis. So we sold advertising for our program to raise money for the costumes and set. And the parents and students not only sewed the costumes, but they built the set over Easter weekend. How did the show go? Well, on Friday, I had the cast and crew go out into the parking lot so they could share their thoughts before going on stage. Rachel, the 12th grade president, said, "I'm so proud of us. Nobody believed we could do this, and here we are, standing together about to perform Shakespeare." We had a full house both nights. On Saturday, after the show, the school board president came up to me and said, "So how much money do you think you need next year for the play budget?" That might be the most wonderful experience for a first-time director ever. I'm just thinking. But what was the value of the play educationally for my students? 3 of them went on to study theater at university. Trish and Fran, who played Beatrice and Benedict in Much Ado About Nothing, they went on to study at university, and Jason, who was a 10th grader, went on to study theater as well. A 9th grader named Jamie, she was a 10th grader, named Jamie, who designed all the costumes, went on to study fashion design, and right now she teaches and she's a professional costume designer in Philadelphia. The 9th grader, James, who played Dogberry, he graduated from college and took a road trip across country reciting his poetry, and a few years ago he finished his first novel. And the 8th grader, Andrew played Conrad, and by 11th grade he'd worked himself into a position as our technical director. In 12th grade he played Romeo, and his personal essay for college applications was about what he'd learned while being a part of drama club. A couple years later, he sent me a photograph of Juliet's balcony from Verona, Italy, where he was studying architecture. When my former students send me news of their adventures, it reminds me my work has meaning beyond the classroom. It makes me super duper happy. But one of my favorite stories is about Mark, the 12th grade student I cast as Leonato. He was manager of the football team, American football, and everybody liked him. But it was really hard to understand what he was saying because he had a mouth full of braces. A teacher stopped me in the hall to ask, "Did I hear you cast Mark in the play?" Yes, I did. Mark got a standing ovation for his role. Everybody in that auditorium heard and understood every word he said. The teacher came up and thanked me for the opportunity to see Mark and his friends in a different light. But that's not even the best part. Later that spring, Mark invited me to his Eagle Scout ceremony, and Eagle Scout is the highest rank in the Boy Scouts. He had volunteered to give a speech, and he wanted me there to hear it. listening to Mark give that speech was a huge turning point in my life. I suddenly realized I want to be a teacher. It's always good when you have a huge turning point to pause and look at a piece of paper. Use these if you're old. Stand by. Huh. Yeah. It makes sense, really. Oh, yeah. I always loved reading books and watching plays. A protagonist overcomes obstacles and at the end is changed. Huh. I became passionate. My addiction became finding new ways to arrange information and spaces so that my students would discover their potential academically, artistically, and personally. Personal turning points come in a variety of forms. They can be internal, like when you have an epiphany or you make a decision, and they can also come from external events. For instance, on my 31st birthday, my father died. He was 54 years old, and it was completely unexpected. I grieved for him, and I miss him right now. Why am I telling you that? Because when he died, I looked at my life and I thought, if my DNA is only giving me 20 more years, I better take some serious time to think about what I'm going to do with my time here. One thing I knew was that every time I was involved with a play, I was happy. So I enrolled in an acting class and I auditioned at the Bloomsburg Theater Ensemble. And a couple of years later, I was in the theater education program at Emerson College. And while I was studying in Boston, my mom went back to school to study environmental science and biology, her biggest dream. 2 years later, I got my master's, and then my mother died. She was 61, and it was completely unexpected. And I grieved for her then, and I miss her now. After her death, I accelerated my efforts. I had a plan to achieve my biggest and craziest dreams. 1, study, perform, and direct Shakespeare. 2, see the planet. I began to study for a year with Shakespeare and Company in Lenox, Massachusetts. And then I got certified with for teaching English as a foreign language in 2009. And then in 2010, I accepted a job teaching English at a high school in Istanbul. So that's how I got here, more or less. Back to the glasses. Excuse me. The thing is, there are also joyful external events. For instance, 2 years ago, Mr. Trio, our beloved school director, knocked on my classroom door and handed me a note that I have framed at home. It said, 1 o'clock, my office. He made a little joke to my class that Miss Stillman was in big trouble, and I laughed. That was the day that I was asked to become the drama teacher at UAA. It was January. I had to pick a play immediately. Dr. Jensen. And I chose A Midsummer Night's Dream. And a few people thought that was a good idea. Most people thought it was ridiculous. Why would you put a bunch of Turkish students on stage? How are they going to understand and perform Shakespeare? The students were concerned that their audiences wouldn't understand what they were saying, until a colleague of mine pointed out that if the audience didn't understand English, it really wouldn't matter what play we did. The really important thing was the students were learning Shakespeare, and they were becoming comfortable with their second, or in some cases, third language, speaking in front of a large group. And they were having fun, inshallah. It's called a play, after all. Last year, we did Romeo and Juliet, and this year we're doing Much Ado About Nothing, almost a 20-year anniversary, frankly, with some scenes from Twelfth Night. So here I am. I think that's where I am. Sometimes I don't know where I am. Does that happen to you? It happens to me. time. Yep, that's where I am. I'm a teacher. I've studied, performed, and directed Shakespeare. On my holidays, I have the great good fortune to travel around and see the planet. I am definitely happy. So I began to wonder, I'll never be as graceful as Fundahanam. Never. So I began to wonder, what's next? I've achieved three of my biggest, craziest dreams. What am I going to do? Well, here I am. It would not have occurred to me to volunteer to do a TEDx talk. And this is where Dennis Turkchapar comes into this story. She auditioned for Midsummer Night's Dream 2 years ago, and she's been an outstanding member of the drama club for 2 years and 3 years, and the MUN club, and she's organized this event. And last week, we were here in the auditorium waiting for the cameras and microphones to get set up before the publicity interview, and I said, Dennis, I'm really nervous. I don't think anyone's going to care about what I have to say. She sat down next to me and she said, Ms. Stillman, you're going to be great. Don't worry about it. And we laughed about our role reversal. We know what we are, but know not what we may be. I never would have volunteered for this, and I'm so grateful to the students of TEDx Uskudar for inviting me here. They reminded me that we all need to experiment and explore and discover what we may be. Thank you.